Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute. I know it's been a minute, but welcome back to Unfiltered Truth. And today we have Sashoy with us. Sashoy is in Toronto, Ontario, and I'll allow Sashoy to introduce herself to us. Welcome to Unfiltered Truth, Journey of Canadian Immigrants. Join us every other week where we talk to a new person about their adventure in Canada. Are you interested in coming? Then this is for you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, if you have not subscribed, please go ahead and do that and like and share. I'm Sashoy. I've always wanted to do that, by the way.
See guys, subscribe.
I'm from Jamaica, so I moved here to Canada in 2017, and I've been here since then. I am a permanent resident working as a special education teacher. I do a lot the school that I work for, it is a nonprofit private school, so we do a lot of fundraising, and I also do a lot of community work, volunteering, and I'm trying to handle the cold that we're about to get into.
Same here. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Sashoy, and thanks for agreeing to do this video. So we're gonna get right into it. So the essence of this YouTube series is for persons to get an overview, get different opinions, hear about different people's journey, so that they also can plan and prepare. For both of us, like I came in 2017 as well. And I feel like YouTube wasn't very popular. There was like one person in Jamaica that helped people. I wasn't prepared. And so we'll hear how prepared you were. I know I wasn't
definitely not prepared either.
So let's get right into it. So what did you do back home before coming here? And what was the decision like to come here? Why did you choose to come here?
Well, I graduated UWI in 2016. So I did psychology in undergrad at UWI, and then I started to do what many people try to do, find a job. I applied to so many places. I did get a few interviews, but not even a letter to say, hey, we are sorry, we can't admit you at this time. So I was just waiting. But in the back of my mind, I wanted to do my master's in clinical psychology at the time. And so I decided that I'm going to look overseas because I do have family here. My sister lives in the US, but the US was completely unaffordable. So it's so funny because my grandfather visited Canada in, I'd say, 2010, 2009. And he's like, Moy, I forgot Canada. And I'm like, okay, Papa, I'm gonna keep it in my right. So he would always say that to me, and that's kind of sparked my interest because I've always wanted not to necessarily live in another country, but to go to school for higher education in another country. Because I went to you and I'm like, I'm not doing this. Actually, before I continue, UWI lost my grad school application. So I actually did want to do my master's at UWI. And at the time, one of my lecturers, she was the head of the department, and she recommended me. She's like, you're good to go. And I dropped off my application, and some of my classmates were going for interviews because for the clinical program, you had to do an interview. And I didn't get anything. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not admitted. And then when I moved off hall, because I used to live on Preston Hall, and when I moved off hall, they called me and they're like, oh, you want to do an interview? And I'm like, no, thank you. Because when I called to check in, you guys said you never got an application from me, but yet I have a receipt of leaving an application. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, you know what? This is too much. I've already had 3 years of UWI. I'm over it.
Yeah. Okay, UWI is not working out, and I want to do some graduate studies. And so look at me. I'm going to just look at Canada. So now walk me through the process of deciding what to do in Canada. What ended up happening, what you ended up studying.
Right. So I was still on this master's journey, like I did not understand or could appreciate the value of doing a diploma, a postgraduate diploma, or another diploma, right? I didn't want to do another undergrad degree, but I didn't understand the value of doing something like that, especially if you've done a generalized degree and you want to get some specialization and you want to get some experience. So I actually did apply to some universities in Canada before applying to Seneca. So I applied to Regina. Also, looking back, like who wants to live in Regina, But I was just applying because I was out looking at my 30 by 30, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do master's after undergrad. And I was one of those people who had to check off things and kind of base my sense of accomplishment on how I'm able to complete the things that I say I'm going to do, because I'm very serious about that. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Because I was looking for a job and I kept getting rejected, and because I applied to school, so I applied like right out of UA. So like that fall season, because application season is in November, December. So I applied then, and then in March and so on, I heard nothing. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I have a cousin who lives here, and so she was like, look at programs from certain colleges, especially since you need experience. So it would be good to do that. And so I was looking at Centennial and I was looking at Seneca. But after looking at the programs at Seneca, I knew that my heart is with children and I wanted to work with children. And so I looked at their early child programs and I read reviews. That I did do. And then initially I applied to their post-grad diploma. It's a 1-year program in child and infant mental health. And then I did not get admitted to that program because there was an issue with the application. So by the time it was time for them to select students, that program was full. And so the program coordinator, she was a really, really nice lady, actually. And she was really great with helping international students like myself, because I wasn't the only person who had that experience. And she referred us to the early childhood education diploma program. That was a 4-semester program, but I could only afford 2 semesters. So a lot of reworking had to be done in terms of planning and in terms of what I wanted to do. And I also opted to do 4 straight semesters. So as opposed to having a break, I started in January. I did 4 semesters back to back, also 0 to 10. Don't do it. But I wanted to be done. And I just, looking back, I definitely would have taken the summer to work and so on. But I wanted to be done with it because I was looking at, being able to work full time and all that stuff. So at that time, you were not able to work more than, well, still now, you're not supposed to work more than part-time hours as an international student. So I just wanted to be done. But that was very hectic, especially starting in the winter. So I started in the thick of winter in January.
Oh, so you started school in January?
I did. I started in January because when I came in 2017, the schools, they were having strikes. Also, I got my study permit processed in Mexico. So I received it 2 weeks into the semester. And because of my program, I had to do a lot of medical stuff. So I had to do like a tuberculosis test and other things that I couldn't have done when I came because the time had passed.
Oh, so you had to defer to the other semester.
So I had to defer, but then a lot of people had to defer because there were lots of strikes within the community colleges. So yeah, so it worked out in my favor.
There was a strike. I was in that strike. Like, we didn't have class. So I know most of the ECE programs, or any teaching or nursing or whatever, there is a placement side to it.
Yes.
Was there a placement side to yours?
Absolutely. So the reason why I actually couldn't start in September was because I had to do these medicals. Well, I did a medical before coming, but I had to do another one. And I had to get the flu shot, which also 0 to 10, don't recommend. And so I was not able to start because the placement is within the semester. So you're at school 3 days and then you go to your placement 2 days, full day.
Oh.
So some programs have a co-op at the end of your class time, where you have 2 semesters of school and then you have a co-op. But for us, it was within the semester because a lot of our assignments were based about placement and so on. So it's kind of learn as you go.
But that's
kind of great, but hectic. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like real, like, I'm just thinking from a perspective, if I just left high school, for example, or I left university and I don't have work experience, that's literally my foot in. And that's also a good thing on my resume because I have all these experiences that I can add to it.
That's definitely one of the pros about the Seneca program. If they do not have the placement during the semester, even if you get it at the end, it's a wonderful opportunity to get some experience, especially if you don't have any. And a lot of companies here, so I know a lot of people are interested in coming to Canada, but some people are a bit skeptical to hire people who don't have Canadian work experience, just because for whatever reason, the idea is that you understand a bit better how things work as having had work here before. So I think it's always great, and your placement is great experience because they look at that, right? And your placement technically could be your next job
Mm-hmm.
as well.
So now we're in our fourth semester. Yes, we're doing placement, but I'm guessing placement is unpaid.
Oh, absolutely. I should have gotten paid for that.
Okay. Outside of school now, how was that transition like for you? Expense wise,
Oh my gosh. So what happened was I came in September, so I did still come.
okay.
And then, because I was hopeful that I could start, when I got here, that's when they told me that, sorry, ma'am, but we can't admit you because you have not fulfilled all the requirements for field placement. And I get it, you're going to work with kids and they're little. So you want to be able to protect yourself and to protect them. So I did not get that at the time, but I understand now that I'm on the other side of it.
Mhm.
I reached out to our international students department and I was like, okay, there's a strike. Technically, there are no classes. I was told to defer. It's not my choice. Can I still work? So I work part time at Babies R Us. Oh my gosh, that was an experience. So I still work part time. So even though I didn't have school, I still work part time because I was allowed to. So I was able to save a little bit from then. But in terms of expense, I took the bus. So living in Markham, taking the bus to Toronto is not bad. It's just when you're crossing city lines,
Have to
I
pay.
did not know you have to pay again. So I'm like, oh my God.
I guess while waiting, it wasn't too bad. But how did you find the cold, and how was it adjusting to Canada, to life in Canada? Talk to people about what that looks like, and for you, what that looks like for you.
Here in Markham, they do not clear the sidewalks with the snow right
Really?
away. So you got to trek through that, trek to the bus stop, snow blowing in my face. Um, what I can say about the cold is that I can't describe what it feels like. It's an experience you have to get for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just know you feel it everywhere. So you have to wear proper clothing. If you're not properly attired, trust me, cool like a bride is gonna be,
But it's bad weather, but yeah, for sure.
yeah,
With the winter clothes is like,
proper, yeah. I would say invest in a good winter jacket, especially if you're going to be taking public transportation, because trust me, the bus is gonna come when it feels like in the wintertime. And it's not the bus driver's fault entirely because traffic is moving
mhm.
slower. There's snow plows on the road, depending on what's going on. So you want to invest in a good winter jacket. So even though it's a bit pricey, that would be one of my recommendations. Getting the weather app, like using that. So checking the temperature before you go outside, so you kind of know how to dress and how to layer. And that's something you learn over time. I spent a lot of money on Uber because
Cold, eh?
when I worked out standing in the cold, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
right? So table that into your budget
mhm.
and you know, just try to make decisions around your travel where especially during the winter time, especially if you're not driving, try to do what you have to do in a central area so you can use Google Maps to see where things are. So excuse me, you reduce your time of being outside because you can get frostbitten, um,
Mhm.
and you can also get sick, right? Because it's very cold out there. But people talk about the cold in Canada and it sounds like we're exaggerating, but we aren't. It's
It's cold.
actually very cold, especially from a tropical country. You don't even see your toes until you're bathing. It's kind of like it's kind of like that. Yeah,
Yeah, except
I was.
yeah, like for
Sorry. Yes,
I'm not going outside. But
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I guess a lot of people can resonate with that um experience as well, like coming, the culture shock of the cold, the culture shock of, the different prices, the different things that you have to pay for. But I want to know, have us move to career after school, PR. We're gonna move into that.
Table that into your budget. Just try to make decisions around your travel, where especially during the winter time, especially if you're not driving, try to do what you have to do in a central area. So you can use Google Maps to see where things are. So excuse me, you reduce your time of being outside.
I guess a lot of people can resonate with that um, experience as well, like coming, the culture shock of the cold, the culture shock of, the different prices, the different things that you have to pay for. But I want to know, have us move to career after school, PR. All right, after school now, thinking about PR and getting a job. I know you did a lot of placement. How was that navigation? I know there's a lot of people who are teachers and don't know how to navigate that space. I know you said you did placement, and you're currently a special ed teacher, but I think for persons that are currently teachers, there is a gap in between of literally just coming into a teacher role here in Canada. And then there are people that are psychologists that are thinking about what are the pathways that I can actually take. So walk us through your steps, and then perhaps you can give us some guidance for persons that would like to come that way.
Okay, so I worked briefly as an ECE, and an ECE is an early child educator. So like with a lot of different professional bodies in Canada, there is a college that regulates the profession. So as an ECE, you are part of the College of Early Childhood Educators. And I would say, depending on your level of experience and what your qualifications are, it varies. So there's not one specific pathway. I know if you are interested in becoming a teacher in the public school system, you have to get what they call an Ontario teacher certificate. So they call them OCT, Ontario Certified Teacher. And usually that's a very difficult role to get into because those people don't retire. They get paid really well. And so they stay there forever. And they have wonderful benefits because they're unionized, right? So it's a great position to have, but also it's very difficult to get into, especially as an immigrant. So what people usually do is they go to get that certification. So it's not a master's degree. It's just training for 2 years to become a teacher.
Yeah, it's after, what is it? It's an after degree something.
Thing. Exactly. I forgot the professional term for it.
Yeah.
But if you're coming as a teacher, you can sign up to be a teacher's assistant. So they call them depending on the setting. So if you're doing special needs or if you're doing a typical classroom, and to be honest, a typical classroom, most of them now have children on the spectrum or with special needs with an educational assistant or someone with specialized skills to guide that child. The problem now is, again, having Canadian experience, because a lot of people do diploma programs here to be qualified to do those roles just so that they can get the highest pay range. So if you're coming in to just get some experience, I would say you can sign up to be an ECA, and that's an early child an early child assistant. So you're assisting the ECE. And you can also explore doing the diploma. They have 1-year diplomas. They have accelerated ones for a couple months. It just depends on what you can afford. And also bear in mind that if you do a program for less than a year, you're not going to be able to get a postgrad work permit. So that's something to consider as well. So I would not advise for you to do any of the accelerated 8-month programs unless you're going to do that and then do something else. But it would just make sense to do a proper 1-year program if that's what you're going to do. And it also varies based on the province. I can only speak to Ontario and what it's like. I do know in terms of structure, Ontario has a very good structure in terms of how to get information. So if you're looking to become a teacher, you can try to look at the different school board websites to see what the qualifications are, so that at least with the qualifications in mind, then you can map out how to go about getting them. And what to do.
So because you completed the ECE, does that qualify you, because now it's a 2-year program, diploma program, does that qualify you as certified to be an ECE, or is it an ECA in that case?
So once you do the ECE diploma, you are qualified to become a registered ECE. And what that is you're part of the college. So if you're not registered, you cannot call yourself an early child educator. You can call yourself something else based on their regulation. And the membership fee, $160, get a membership number. But
so
for
once
me,
you finish, you just need to pay that $160.
Yeah. So the good thing is, depending on most colleges now, for example, Seneca or George Brown is a good school to do your ECE at. They're Centennial, but I find that based on my interactions with people who've done the Centennial program, the Seneca program is better. You still get a placement at Centennial and all of that, but I feel like the Seneca program prepares you for the field more in terms of what you will experience and what you will be required to do. And I think the quality of work is better because of the preparation you receive. Seneca takes their ECE program really seriously, and they have good advisors, and they also have really great teachers. That's important to consider because at the end of the day, you're spending so much money, you're moving to a new country, you want to get the best, right? So I am kind of in two fields because I'm in education and I'm in psychology. So as a special education teacher, it's more psychology based in terms of the intervention. So we do something called applied behavior analysis, ABA, and that is a system specifically geared towards kids on the spectrum and people on the spectrum as well, and people with other special needs, just because of how everything is set up. So because I did psychology and because I did ECE and I had that experience with children, I could go into the field of so I actually didn't start as a teacher. I started as an instructor therapist. So I worked for about 5 to 6 months as an ECE. Right after Seneca, I got a job from a job fair that Seneca had for us as students. So that was a great benefit because not only did they give us a placement, but they invited so many different centers and companies who were looking for graduates. And I think almost everyone in my class was hired from the job fair. Like we never had to send a resume anywhere. So that was awesome. And that's another benefit of going to Seneca, even though they have their cons. But that I would definitely give them 2 thumbs up for that. So because I did an undergrad in psychology, I had the background necessary to work in the field. So usually getting into the ABA field or special needs, you usually have to have some kind of experience with children on the spectrum in psychology or any community related work. So sociology, social work for sure. And depending on the center and the entity, then you can work as a behavior therapist. And the trajectory for that, you can become a special education teacher, or you can become a senior therapist who is someone who's creating programs for children with special needs. So as an instructor therapist or a behavior therapist, you act as the person implementing the programs. The senior therapist creates the programs and manages the child's progress and interventions as it relates to their learning and their behavior management. So a huge part of ABA's behavior management, because a lot of these children have problematic behaviors, so they're not able to go to a typical school setting all day or at all, depending on what their needs are. So it really depends on the individual person and what you're interested in, because depending, as I said before, your experience or your qualifications, then that will determine the route that you take. That I like about being in Canada, every job that you're going to, for the most part, you get trained very well. So you coming in with your educational background, you also get the hands-on experience. And so for the most part, you get prepared for the task and the role, and you can determine if it's for you or if it isn't. And doing the school route as a student, you also get that field placement experience. So the good thing about the social sciences is you cannot complete your program without doing a field placement component, because what you're learning, to be honest, is great, but in theory, when you try to apply it, it's done in a completely different way, and it's usually individualized based on the setting and the children or people you're catering to.
Yeah. So I know with a lot of these professions, especially the regulated ones, there are what you call it, there are boundaries that we kind of have to knock on and try to pop over. And I realized that the ECE kind of provided a good bridge for you to kind of cross over. And with your education, you're saying that being a education counselor, you said it was, or therapist?
A behavior therapist.
So behavior therapist, was there any other certifications that you needed to move to behavior therapist and then to move to special ed teacher?
No. Sometimes, depending on where you're applying to, they ask you to have a diploma in special education or in ABA or in behavior management. So sometimes they do ask for that, but usually they ask for that if you don't have like an appropriate background.
Mhm.
And it's useful if you do have that background going into being a behavior therapist, just because it saves you a lot of heartache and surprises. So like when kids are like hitting you or spitting, you're like, wait, what is happening? Because that caught me off guard because I was not prepared for that. And also I wasn't prepared for the kids who can't communicate at all, and they don't have anything to communicate, and they're really frustrated. And so I had to learn how to use speech generated devices to get them to communicate and to teach them how to use that to share what they wanted. So it varies. I know there are some courses on LinkedIn, and there's this platform called EDX, I think it's called. So there are some courses there. So I would suggest for people who are interested in education to look at doing online professional courses. When I first started as a behavior therapist, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. And one of the things that I did, because I didn't have a background in ABA, I bought books. I asked my coworkers who did the programs at Georgia Brown and at U of T and at York University. I'm like, what resources did you use?
Mhm.
Right. So a big part of it is self-learning as well, because for me, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing or getting myself into, because it's an intense field for sure. So if anyone is watching and you're considering special education or working with kids with special needs, people say all the time, oh my gosh, what you're doing is great. But it's very difficult because of what you're required to do every day. And depending on where you work, if you're not supported, thankfully, I work somewhere where the support is great. And I have a great connection with my supervisor and for my assistant as well. So we have great teamwork going on, but a lot of people don't have that in the field because a lot of centers and agencies are for profit. And so when you have for profit centers, the bottom line is to make money. And so they cut corners on many different things. So that's also something to consider when you're looking to go into a field. You want to make sure you want to, because I feel like when you, as an immigrant, there's some things that we are afraid to ask. I remember
Mhm.
when I was applying to my first job that I had, that was a disaster. We'll have a moment of silence for that. But it did give me a lot of skin in the game, as people say, because I had
Mhm.
to learn quickly. I had to think smart, and I had to outsource my help, right? Because as an immigrant, I didn't think about asking, what are your policies on staff development and wellness?
Mhm.
Because living in North America, you're going to be moving away from everything that you know that's familiar. And even though Canada's a relatively easy society to assimilate into, it's kind of easy to get around and easy to, especially if you've traveled to the US before, you
Mhm.
kind of see how much more easy it is to just understand everything. And it's less fast paced than the US for sure.
Mhm.
But you get to see that it's different, and there's so many things that will be a culture shock to you. First of all, people don't give you personal space. So that's one thing that I had to, like,
Small
what
talk.
is oh my goodness, the small talk. They want to be in your business all the time. Oh my gosh, Sashoy, where did you go for the weekend? Nowhere. I'm never going nowhere with you. Seeing enough, like, why are
What's your
we doing
plan?
this?
I know. What are your plans for the
What are
holidays?
your plans for the
Are you going on
holidays?
vacation?
And then they start telling you about this. Oh, do you know Susanna's going to the? No, I didn't know she was going to the college. I don't want to know about Suzanne. She's not my friend. I don't know her. She surely does not want me to know her business. So that's the thing. Canadians overshare. And at first it took me off guard, but then I realized that's just how they try to connect with you.
Yeah.
And it's just how they are. They just talk and talk. But to get back to just knowing what you kind of want to do, I think there's a lot of information out there. You also have to be sure of what you want.
Let's move to getting your PR. So now you're settling a bit. You kind of had a good, I want to say a good, trajectory. I see where a lot of teachers would come and they kind of don't want to do that 2-year program. And even for persons that do teaching, the lucky thing for you is that you did psychology. But somebody that did teaching and to do ECE, the visa officer might be like, this does not make sense.
Why?
So, right. So it kind of make a lot of sense for you, and you know, that trajectory kind of worked out.
A lot of people coming here, your mindset is, okay, I'm going to find something equivalent to what I have. And initially that may not be the case, right? And you have to kind of wrap your mind around, and don't get me wrong, it may be the case for some people, but more often than not, you have to start somewhere below where you are. And that's the reality. It's not fair. I've met doctors, engineers who are from other parts of the world. They're doing Uber and they're doing DoorDash and they're doing things like that because it's very difficult to get in without any Canadian experience. And some of them don't have money to go and do school, right? So they're trying their best to make ends meet. So my point is, don't be afraid to start over in terms of your career initially, because you know what your end goal is, right? So you're not going to be working retail forever. And the beauty about it is you never know who you can meet. So be open to that and give yourself grace, but also understand that a lot of people have come before you and we've had similar experiences and we've been able to move beyond where we first started, but you have to condition yourself to know that it won't always look like what you expect. And I think for me, I had this whole plan, but it's good to have an open mind and some sense of humility, because if you are not humble, you will be humbled by whatever it is. So it's good to have that in the back of your mind.
That is one thing with Canada will humble you.
Oh yeah.
Let's move now, because we were talking about, you know, there's all the different spectrums for immigrants. Becoming landed, getting our careers on the road, or now we're on the side of getting landed. We both came at this around the same time. Probably I started like a few months before you, but essentially we came at the same time. And I know for myself, I had the COVID wave, but a lot of people had different waves, because there's always something going on with IRCC. It's either they're giving away all the money, or they're taking everybody from one country, taking them in. There's just always something going on. There's always something going on.
Oh yes,
and
all the time.
Somebody's always caught in that something going on. So let's hear it. So were you caught in something going on?
Oh, I'm always caught in something going on. You know what? I don't even like excitement. I'm not that person, to be honest, but I'm always in an excitement somewhere. And I'm just like, why me?
Yeah.
So I applied. So before the landing process, before even applying, right? Something that I want people to pay attention to. So if you get your postgrad work permit and you have a year to work, I would suggest being careful about where you choose to work, because you're going to need those hours for your application. And for me, if I had known where I was working, because the working conditions, it was just very stressful, and it made it a lot more difficult to get those hours, because it felt like I was not in prison, because I could have left, but I didn't want to, because I wanted to get all my experience in one place, because I wanted to apply under they call it NOC number. I wanted to have that classification and all of that. So I wasn't imprisoned by choice. I would say I just felt like I had to stay, and it was very stressful. So think about where you want to work. And a point that I mentioned earlier about asking about certain things, like what are your policies for employee development, growth, learning? What are your policies on the wellness of your employees? What do you do to retain employees, especially if it's a field with high turnover? You know, don't be afraid to ask, what, you know, how can I be eligible for benefits? All of those things, because that affects your quality of life while you are waiting to become a permanent resident, right? Because I started to feel like I probably shouldn't have come here, because I feel really stressed out. And I'm in a place where at the time we didn't have benefits, and I was full-time. We didn't have benefits. And I was like, oh my God, this is bad. And then I hear other people and they're like, oh, we have benefits, we have this. And I'm like, what? How? And then it was based on the decision that I made. And if I had asked those questions and not taken that stuff for granted, like, you know, when I did my interview, the person who did the interview with me, she was like, oh yeah, these things are coming. And I'm like, when I thought about it, I'm like, you've been around for 10 years. Why have they not been set up? Like, where are they coming from? Who was bringing them? And why are they not here yet? Like, what's the delay, right? So that's something to consider. And And everywhere.
Not to cut you, but I think what happens for us, like as immigrants, is you are trying to get on that first train that you can, whether or not you have a 1 year postgrad work permit or two, you're literally trying to get that 1 year as soon as possible. Because the truth is, who wants to stay on a work permit forever?
Nobody. Yeah,
Everybody wants to get to their PR. Everybody wants to get, I feel like that's like your first goal.
Yeah. Once you're done school, you just want to be done and get it. Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think that's so also something that I learned during the process. So I luckily at this place I was working at, there were other people from other countries. So the beautiful thing about Canada is you meet people from literally everywhere. So we were sitting at lunch and everybody was talking about, oh, I'm from Greece and I'm from Turkey and I'm from Eritrea. And I'm like, first of all, I had to look up where Eritrea was.
Right.
And now I have two beautiful friends from there. So that's the beauty of life here. You get to meet so many great people, and the culture sharing, that's a sidebar, but yes. So I realized that you don't have to be a full-time employee. You just need to be working full-time hours, meaning you can be a contracted worker. So they call it an independent contractor. Just a note for that as well, because that happened to me. I was an independent contractor for a part of my time. That affects your taxes because the government considers you to be self-employed, because technically that's what it means, right? You're contracted, you're not a full-time employee. And what that means is the government, you're not paying any taxes upfront as you earn. So you are going to have to pay those taxes later. And trust me, you don't want to know. Because I did not calculate in provincial tax. I just put aside federal tax. And when they told me how much I had at H&R Block, I'm like, sir, you need to read that number again because you read it backwards. That's not what it says. So that's just another side note as well. As an independent contractor, contact the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, and find out based on how much you're making, how much you should be saving or putting aside, because when you're doing your tax return, you want to actually get a return. You don't want to actually pay them any money back. So that's a sidebar, something to consider, because once you start working full-time, even as a student, you can submit your tax form. You're going to get one from your school as well. So you want to make sure that you're prepared, because I was not prepared. And I didn't know anybody else who was an independent contractor. So nobody could have prepared me for the surprise that I got when the CRA is like, oh, you owe us. You definitely owe us. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I saved it because I didn't, because there's also the option to pay monthly, which I didn't know about, because by then I would have done that as well. So, but you pay to learn sometimes, and these are growing pains of an immigrant, right? And yeah, so I think that you just need to you need to be sure of where you want to work, but you don't have to be a full-time employee. You should make sure though that it's in a field that's classified
NOC.
NOC classification, because then you're going to have some problems trying to figure out like what stream to apply under, what heading. So you want to make sure you have that, but you don't have to be full-time where you get benefits. You can be a contract employee, because you're going to get a letter from your employer when you're ready to apply, and they'll outline how long you've been working for, your position, and all of that, all of those things. But Sanji will be better able to kind of walk you through that than me for sure. But I got my hours and then I applied. And so what usually happens is you apply to the province before. I'm pretty sure Sanji has talked about this on another video. You apply to the province and the province decides, okay, we want this person to live here. And then you submit all your documents. And unfortunately for me, when I submitted, there was, I don't remember, the Taliban took over Afghanistan. And it's like they took over the IRCC as well, because nobody could get anything from them. No work permits, nothing. They were doing they were processing those persons, right? And understandably, so a lot of Afghans are here and they wanted their family to come over. And so what that meant for me was I had to wait 11 months. So initially when I applied, they were like, okay, 112 days. So just imagine me seeing 112 days, and then there's 150 days past, then 200. Hold on, did y'all forget my address? I was checking my spam every day. I call them, they're like, sorry, we're only processing and answering calls about people in Afghanistan. I'm like, okay, I need to get that accent because I need to call somebody and somebody needs to tell me what's going on.
Oh my
But
God.
I eventually got it. And then I got my landing paper, which is something you definitely need to keep. So when you receive that, you keep it safe. You keep your virtual copy, upload it to the drive, upload it to the cloud. And then you also need to keep your physical copy as well, because they send it to you, you can print it. Yeah, so that was kind of the process. In terms of applying, I think the most challenging thing was the IELTS test. I'm like, I grew up in an English speaking country.
You know what? It's like testing your English because
It's not even, yeah.
I did the self-pip.
People, if you're listening, do the self-pip because it's easier.
Yeah. Okay. So that's quite the journey. I think overall, you can just sum up and your overall take of like some encouragement for somebody that is looking to come to Canada or is currently here, just started. What would you advise them? What would you say to that person?
So I'll split it in two. So if you're already here, congrats, we're making it. I think prices of the things, oh my gosh. Everyone, like if you're in Canada, you're thinking about moving to Canada, there's the Flip app. So that app has yeah, girl, we gotta get the savings everywhere. We can't.
So it's the link is actually on my website. I have I have a full page of free resources that you guys can go on. All
Go check it out, guys.
So banks, the Flip app for groceries, cheap groceries, because life is getting hard. But yeah,
absolutely.
Back to you.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about coming, I would definitely say examine your reasons for coming. Because if your reasons for coming is just to make money, then you're not going to be as happy as you would imagine, because it may not happen initially, or you may make the money and you hate the weather, the life here is not for you. So evaluate your reasons for coming and make sure that it benefits your holistic experience. And that means mental health as well, because I have a friend who lives in Newfoundland and Labrador, and she hates the winter. She's just like, it's way worse than what we have here in Toronto or even in Ontario, right? Because she's further up north. And so it takes a toll on you for sure. So think about why you really want to come and what you hope to achieve. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have a checklist of things that you want to do, or like a timeline. Be flexible with your timeline, because a lot of things may not happen in the way you anticipate. If you're just coming, have a miscellaneous budget for things like dental expenses, healthcare. I got hospitalized at Seneca. Thankfully, I had student insurance. My bill was like $3,000. I'm like, as a student, I'm gonna get $3,000 for. I'm like, oh my gosh. My mom was going crazy, but I didn't have to pay anything because insurance. So think about something like that as well. Research the school. Make sure, also very important, make sure it's a school that's on the list. The immigration list of schools that are eligible for you to get a postgrad work permit, because a lot of private schools, they may seem cheaper, but then when you are done, you technically have to leave. If you're not going the school route, if you're coming, because I know people are immigrating with their spouses, things like that, give yourself grace, because it is very difficult, I would say. Moving to another country, the expectations are different.
Yeah, those are some really, really solid advice. And yeah, I for sure had to go through my fair share. So I definitely agree with a lot of it. Thank you so much, Sashoy. Like, you provided so much information to persons. I'm sure people are going to be like scrolling back through and be like, what did she say I should do here again? What did she say here? So thank you a million. I truly, truly appreciate it. And thanks for everyone who watched this and listened to Sashoy. Don't go trying to ask me or contact information now.
Oh boy. I am not the one for actually, you know what? If you are interested in going into ABA and you're watching, then you can contact Sanjay, and depending on how she deems the connection to be in my best interest and in your best interest, then she can definitely share details, because I would be happy to. It's just that, let me just give a disclaimer, I'm kind of doing a lot right now. So when I give you my email, I try to get back to people in 24 hours. So
yeah. Thank you so much.